All right, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Let There Be Talk. Fantastic guest today. A.J. Croce is here, son of the singer-songwriter master himself, Jim Croce from the 70s and 60s. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's Wednesday in LA. Where are you at, Nashville?
Not today. I'm in a little barrier island off the southwest coast of Florida,
What are you doing there?
relaxing for a couple days before heading back out west for a few shows.
Yeah, yeah. What do you got? Some Persols there? Your glasses?
Yeah, these are old ones that found them on eBay.
Yeah, I got some vintage Persols also. They're similar to that, but they're a little more of the Roy Orbison shape. Really rare.
Yeah, yeah, I like them.
Yeah, I'm an eyewear freak.
I could tell.
Yeah, these are Jacques Marie Maj. You ever check them out?
No, no, I like it.
Oh my God, it's going to become your new addiction. You know, it's almost a cult. I'm telling you.
I believe it.
How are you, man?
All's well.
Excellent. I listened to the record. Fantastic record. Shooter Jennings did this record, Heart of the Eternal, out at Sunset Sound, which is one of the most incredible studios in the United States, I would say. How did you dig it?
I loved it. My experience with Shooter was great, and I hadn't been to the studio in many years, so it was nice to be back there. And yeah, I mean, it was a unique experience. I think I've been fortunate to work with a lot of older producers, and and I loved every bit of it. But I also generally had an idea of what it was going to sound like a song or a project was going to sound like going into it because I understood how they colored things and the way that they heard arrangements. It was um, it was for that reason that I wanted to work with someone different that I wasn't sure exactly how it was going to turn out. I didn't know what it was going to sound like after it was finished. And while I came in with all the arrangements for the instruments and the lyrics and everything was completed, I had an idea of how the music would sound in one way. I didn't know how he was going to treat it, and so that really that really made it fun. And having that unknown is always, I think, really healthy.
Did you know Shooter before, or how did this all come about?
I had played on one of his dad's records, just on a song, and we're kind of mutual fans of one another. In the mid '90s, he came and saw me play and invited me to see him the next night at it was in LA at the House of Blues, and and then he invited me to go to the studio and play with him. And I met Shooter there um, in the mid '90s and kind of lost touch. We saw each other a couple times around then, and then reintroduced ourselves a few years back, and I just love being around him. He's just a wonderful, talented individual, and very soulful and real. And so for me, it was like a natural thing. I was looking for the right kind of producer where I was going to be maybe a little outside of my comfort zone, and I thought he was a great option.
Yeah, he's amazing. Like when I first moved to LA, I guess, I don't know, it's been like 23 years or whatever. He was one of the first people that I met at the Viper Room. He was playing in that rock band Stargun, you know? And I'm like, oh, these guys are amazing. It's like they were bringing the GNR fire back to the strip, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And they rolled that for a while, and then it broke up, and he started playing country music, and a few years ago he put out a record with a song called Denim and Diamonds. That's probably one of the best songs I've heard in 20 years. It's like Pink Floyd country, you
Uh-huh.
know. But
Yeah, country rock.
he's really come into his own as like a singer songwriter, a producer. It's pretty amazing, the people he's worked with. It's awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and a great human being.
And especially somebody like you. I'm really close with Jacob Dylan, and it's always that kind of stigma of oh, here comes somebody's son,
Hmm.
who played music. And I've talked about it many times, which is weird. If somebody is an actor and their dad was an actor, they don't get that same stigma.
It's true, and I've thought about that a lot, and um, I think that maybe part of the reason is that with with acting, you're supposed to show versatility, and with music, you're supposed to have a sound. And and if that sound is different than you look, or if that sound is different than the way people think it should be for any reason, then you have a harder time with it. And I think that's the simple part of it is celebrity is a strange thing, and I don't think I'll ever understand the psychology of it, but it's relevant. I knew that when I opened Pandora's box with Croce Plays Croce that I was not going to be able to put that away.
Right.
Uh, um, and I had to be okay with that, which I am. And I think that it came about organically, and it came about because of the love of the music. And I think Shooter came to that much earlier, but he was also got to know his father, very well, and they got to actually collaborate on things, while he was alive. So I think that's a little different, but he really was in a lot of ways really in the same place. A lot of people, I think when you're still in that mode of fighting it on a daily basis, of trying to prove that you're worthy of recognition, worthy of being considered an individual, you're really against the wall because no one wants to hear it. So I think once you can come to terms with your own identity, uh, first and foremost, and then understand that you'll never understand the way the outside world actually sees you, the better off you are.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's true. I mean, with you, your father passed it when you were two, so it wasn't like he's grabbing you and putting you up on the piano and you guys are jamming.
Right, that's right.
Um, so that is also always an interesting thing of how did you get into it? Because he's gone, and eventually you get a little older and you figure out who your father is. Is
Mm.
that the curiosity, or is it just hearing the radio in the car, or what was it?
Are you asking about my interest in music?
Yeah, how did that
Yeah,
start? Because it wasn't like he was around. I mean, he was, but
yeah,
you were two.
yeah. It's a calling. I'm a fifth generation musician. Most people don't know that. My great grandfather sang opera. My grandmother on my mother's side was a performer, and my grandfather put himself through medical school playing music. My mother obviously and my father
Right.
uh, made careers of it. My father did, certainly, as brief as it was. And so music was always around, and my father's record collection was really powerful. And, I lost my sight at an early age and got turned on to Ray Charles and got turned on to soul music and old blues and jazz. And it all like the first time I heard a blues scale, or heard gospel, or heard soul music, it resonated in a way that nothing else really had. And hearing that minor third, hearing that seven, hearing, at 3 or 4 years old, I didn't know what that was, um, but it was in my head and it wouldn't leave. And so during that time, music was my escape. It was my solace for, in that time that I was, um, kind of struggling with sight and gradually regaining it. And all of that music was helpful. And, of course, I played along to the radio in the 70s growing up. So, ELO would come on, I'd play along, McCartney or the Stones or Elton John, or whatever it was that was, McCartney or something, John Lennon. It was easy to play Magic, so it was easy to play along. It was, playing along with Mr. Blue Sky. It was just one chord for half the song. I can do. It's about, and then, of course, the early stuff that like really inspired me, from like the jazz and the New Orleans music and the blues stuff. That was at the same time I was listening, to that, and Fats Waller's stride piano, that really influenced me. He is an artist. But there was every kind of music. Little Richard. When I heard Little Richard for the first time, I just couldn't believe what I was hearing, because there was nothing else like it. No one else could scream like that. No one else could evoke that emotion that I felt when I heard him, for the first time. Same way with Ray Charles or Stevie, or any of these iconic artists that really touched me. But Fats Waller was the whole package. He was a songwriter. He could have just been a songwriter. He could have just been a comedian. He could have just been a piano player. He was the whole deal. And there weren't a lot of people like that in the 30s, in the 20s and 30s. There were few and far between. Everyone had their role to play: the songwriter, the musician, the performer, and so that was an inspiration. And same with Ray Charles. He was a guy that could play any genre of music and make it his own. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be able to live without being put in a box musically. And that was the dream. Is you may not know which exact genre I'm drawing from, but you're going to know it's me no matter what, because my voice is identifiable and my piano playing is identifiable, and hopefully my guitar playing is identifiable enough that when you hear it, you're like, oh, I know that. I know who that is. I became a stylist because of that. In that I didn't want to copy what had been done. I wanted to understand how it worked and make it my own.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, this record definitely has a lot of flavors that I recognize, but it also sounds very, very much you as I went back through the other records. I mean, I was listening to this one song, Complications of Love. It's almost kind of, it could have been an Amy Winehouse song, you know?
Oh, well,
That's,
thanks.
it feels like,
Except I was around a long, long time before Amy Winehouse.
of course. No, but what I'm saying is you could have wrote it for her, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I could hear her covering that.
that would have been great,
I
man.
know. I know, right?
I got to see her perform, and in her prime, and it was pretty wonderful. And I think that certainly wasn't where I was drawing from. I was drawing from the, like, well, the music part of it, existed before the lyrics of Complications of Love. The guitar part that I'm playing on there, I'm playing two parts on the record. When I wrote the song, it was kind of an exercise in running those diminished scales that you'd hear in Django
Right.
stuff, like hot club stuff.
Yeah.
So you hear every time I go to that four after a verse, um, I play that line. That's the ascending line that is this diminished thing, and that was one facet. And then the solo was my learning how to play a Chopin etude on guitar, and obviously I wasn't able to play it the same way, and I broke it apart and figured out how to incorporate it, and then played unisons with the violin on it. And so for me, it was kind of an exercise as it started, and then just became this kind of romantic, almost like a tango in a way.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like popular music. It's pop music. Maybe not from this era, but from some era, whenever it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely catchy, and that's why I was thinking like, oh, she could have easily covered this song, and it would have just been right in her wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well,
Now,
that's good.
I really like this song "Reunion," and John Oates. Uh, what did he co-write this with you?
Mm-hmm.
I've
Yeah.
had him on the show. He's an interesting guy.
Yeah. He's a sweetheart and really um, down to earth. he uh, he and I met at the Ryman for a John Prine tribute. We were both performing, and live in Nashville, both of us. And I had known he was around for a while, and we met and hit it off. And I said, "You want to write a song?" And he called me up the next day, and we got together. A few days, about a week later, he had to go to Philly, and he was visiting his father, um, who was in a retirement home. He was 100 years old,
Wow.
and he told John, you know, I'm ready for my reunion, with the people I love and lost, and um, I've had this amazing life, and I'm ready. And John came to my place with that idea and said, "Well, what if it was kind of a gospel thing?" And he was playing it in four time, that just a little piece of the chorus, uh, which had the title of it, and that was about it. And I said, "No, I can't have a gospel song in 4/4. It has to be in 3 or 6. And so I started playing the piano part you hear, and it just clicked, and we wrote it. We've written since then, and it's really nice to work with John because he's a really wonderful musician. I don't think people know how great he is, but he's one of the few people I've written with in the last 4 or 5 years, outside of the working with Leon Leon Russell. Was He's such a good musician. He knew, like in Reunion, I didn't want to go back to the four again for the chorus, or I didn't want to go into this pre-chorus thing to any of the chords I had already gone to. And he said, "Well, why don't we just go to this minor two that'll bring us to the four really easily?" And it sounds like it's the same, almost the same chord, but it's different. And I was like, this is such a beautiful, rare moment for me, because I usually bring all the music and then collaborate on lyrics with a co-writer, and to be able to have a co-writer that's so fluid in the logic of it, it was a real treat.
Oh yeah, man. Him growing up and coming up in that, gospel and that Philly sound and the soul and everything. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And he also, Daryl Hall trashes him a lot, saying, he didn't write anything. And, you know, um, his last solo album, I think, came out a couple years ago. I had him on the show. It was
Yeah,
fantastic.
Reunion. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that was so that ended up on his record, and he did it, a really unique way, different than I did it. And then I was like, I think they can both live, and be uniquely their own thing. His version, my version. In fact, this just in January, we played a. He came and joined me on stage for a few songs in Philadelphia, and we played Reunion. And the way we did it was we started off in his key, and then moved down to my key, and it was really fun, really fun.
Let's talk a little bit about you. You mentioned that you had lost your sight. I guess you were four. How, what happened? Was it like a glaucoma thing, or what was that about?
It was honestly, it was child abuse.
Oh,
Honestly, there's no other way to put it. But one of my mother's partners was a sociopath, and so after a year of unbearable and really unspeakable treatment, I lost my sight, and it gradually came back over 6 years with the left eye. And I need these kind of tinted lenses, which allow me to see a little bit of depth and contrast.
wow, wow, man, that's heavy. I didn't think it was going to be that answer. It's like, well, I'm glad that you can, you got your sight back. And I mean, that had to be rough, like school and life, right? Just
Mm-hmm.
getting around. I can't even imagine. I had a guy at my show over the weekend. I'm a comedian, and he's about 70, and he didn't have glasses on or anything. He was just like looking at there was a screen in the venue, and I said, "Why are you watching the screen?" And he said, "Oh, I'm blind." But it wasn't like that, usually a blind guy, the guy's blind. And his name was Mo. And this guy was so festive, man. Like we had the best time the rest of the show. I was
Yeah,
riffing with him, and I was like, I love this man's soul,
yeah, yeah.
It was just amazing. At one point, the lights went out in the venue, and I said, Mo, not that you would know, but the lights just went out in the venue. And he was laughing so fucking hard. So,
Yeah.
man, people that think they got it tough, they don't even know.
We got to be grateful for what we have. And when you're a kid, you're very resilient. I don't think it's until you're a teenager and other people tell you that you have it bad or you have it good that you really take it to heart, and and then start figuring out who you can blame for that shit. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it takes it takes a while. As a kid, you're pretty you're very forgiving, and if nothing else, it made me a more cautious individual. But I think that it's part of life. What can you do?
Yeah. Did that lead to a strange relationship with your mother?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, for the most part, it was challenging for many, on and off at different times, more than others, as relationships are, and um, and then about 7 or 8 years ago, she was diagnosed with speech aphasia, and she had began losing her speech. It's part of Alzheimer's, and and we hadn't spoken for a couple of years, and I realized that it was time to forgive and move on, as it's so important to do for everyone, I think. And in doing so, we became closer, and I was able to have some of these conversations with her when it was no longer really in some ways necessary. I'd found peace in all of that. Um, and I think for her, she was finally able to as well.
Well, yeah, man, You can't take that to the grave with you, man. It's I think eventually people have to, if you let stuff go, I mean, they've said that, like deep anger and pain and stuff can cause cancer. I
I
believe it.
don't doubt it.
I
I don't doubt
I
it.
I don't either.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, so you go into Sunset Sound
Mhm.
and you're working with Shooter on this record. How long did it take to track? Were you tracking it live? Who else played on it? Did Shooter play on it?
No, well, I'll tell you, I'll answer each question.
Yep.
Uh, we did go into Sunset Sound and Studio 3 there, and and it was it's a wonderful room. I love old gear. They had brought in a 2-inch recorder for me because I just like to record to tape, which was a
Great.
first, I think, for Shooter. Um, I record. Oftentimes, I'm playing multiple instruments on a track, so I'll record whatever instrument and sing vocals at the same time as whatever instrument is the dominant instrument of the song. Generally, the dominant instrument, not always, but so it might be at the piano or it might be a guitar, and what you hear is the take. So made sure we had a good take. Generally, try to do 3 or 4 passes of each song. We got all of the basic tracks and a lot of the overdubs done in 4 days.
Wow.
Um, and so when I'd finish a song, if we knew that we had it and I had been playing on a piano, I would go over to organ or Mellotron or Moog or whatever, play that part, and then and then listen to what we had and see what if I needed to play a guitar part or if there was another thing that I was hearing or he was hearing. But generally, I had the arrangements all complete walking into the studio, um, and then and so what the vocal you hear is is a live performance and the whatever instrument it is that I'm playing, it's a live performance. I really feel that's important to the music. It's important also to it makes it feel very organic. Even if you layer it on top of that and you create a sonic world that may not be able to be created by 5 people or 4 people in a live situation. Um, it's there's something that's organic about it at its core. So when you perform that song live, it's actually like hearing the album. And then I worked with my touring band at the time, who were pretty legendary studio players as well. Gary Malibur was on drums. Who had been on the Moondance and Tupelo Honey and all those Van Morrison, and was a drummer
Wow.
for Steve Miller Band from '69 to '85, and all those
Wow.
records. And so he's great rock drummer, but knew how to play jazz and knew how to play Latin music, knew how to play all different kinds of stuff. My bass player David, I met when I was 19. He was with Dr. John, and was with him for almost 40 years, and Toussaint and Etta James, and we kind of followed each other around because after I started went out on tour with the Nevilles, and he had just been playing bass with the Nevilles, and I went out and did some shows. Got to sit in with Etta James on some stuff, and he had just left the band, and then we met. I was 19, and he and we just kind of stayed in touch. We lost touch for a minute, and Alan Toussaint knew I was looking for a bass player, and and so I was playing a couple little shows in New Orleans to put a band together, rhythm section together, and found David again. We reconnected, and then my guitar player James, he was on a ton of great records, from Freddie Fender to Delbert McClinton and Leroy Parnell, all kinds of country stuff and Americana of all sorts, and out of Fort Worth originally. And so it was like this band that I've been touring with, and we had been playing, kind of nonstop. We had a real brief break, about a month break between legs of this tour, and that's when we went in. So we did all the basic tracks in 4 days. We did 2 days of overdubs, and had a violinist come in, and Margaret Price joined, and then I played a couple little things. Jim Oblon joined us, and then we mixed. We mixed for 3 days, and we were done.
Wow. Wow. Is that Studio 3? Is that the Van Halen studio? That
It's
one?
I don't know about Van Halen, but I know it's like the Purple Rain studio.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. 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 That's such a epic story. I had the owner of Sunset Sound on is that whole
Oh, cool.
that basketball court. They're out there playing basketball.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man, that studio is just got so much. I mean, most LA studios we can say that about, you know?
If they're still open, especially,
Right, right.
um, the ones that are still open, they all have that thing about them. And yeah, most of my career I've recorded in LA, except for probably the last 15 years. Um, but yeah, I mean, so it's nice to be there, and my son lives in LA, so I love getting to be there and see him.
Yeah. You
Uh,
live in Nashville now?
I do, yeah,
How
yeah.
do you like Nashville?
I it's my office.
Yeah.
I love it in that way. There's not another city like it for collaboration.
Oh yeah.
Um, I love LA, I love New York, but unless you're working on a project that has some potential financial gain, you're not likely to find easy collaborators because it's such a hustle.
Oh yeah.
Uh, you know, you know,
Yeah.
um, and so Nashville is a place where people from LA and New York come to collaborate. If you want to work with someone just for the sake of creating something in LA, they'll be like, okay, what are you doing in October? And it's 6 months from now. But if there's in Nashville, it's like someone will call you up, and it's like, what are you doing today? What are you up to? Someone knocks on the door, and it's, hey, can you play on this thing? It's just a very collaborative city. It's growing. It's different than it used to be, and there's good and bad things about it. I don't know that I feel the same sense of home that I feel in California or I feel in New Orleans, say, but um, it's one of those places that is wonderful for what it is.
Yeah. I love Nashville. Every time I'm there, especially the more California people that move there, the
Yeah.
better it gets, I think. Because you get some better food,
Uh-huh.
you get some better fashion,
Uh-huh.
and you get a kind of a better mix. It's not just like Nashville.
Well, I feel like Nashville's always been one of those transient cities. You
Totally.
know, it's always been that way. I mean, even the Opry. I don't think anyone in the early days of the Opry, or even later days of the Opry, until the last 20 years, ever was born in Nashville.
No.
Everyone from somewhere else, whether it was East Tennessee or the Ozarks, or somewhere in Appalachia or Alabama or Georgia, wherever it was, Louisiana. They were visiting. They came to perform on the Opry, and went on tour or went home, and I don't think it's much different now. I think that it's still, people move there with the optimism that people move to Hollywood for, or New York for, and some people find a way to make it work, and those that don't leave, and then
Yep.
you get a new. But I think that the more diverse uh, group of people that are moving from all over the country and all over the world is really benefiting the city. And it just there's just a lot more kooks, which
Yeah.
is the thing that I never liked about the city was there just weren't enough kooks there. And I don't mean people trying to be weird. I mean just genuinely weird people. you
Yeah.
know, just,
Yeah.
which I like eccentrics. And I think a lot of the older generation of songwriters and producers and musicians are real eccentrics, and it was kind of missing in the 80s and 90s, and early 2000s in the music that was coming out. I think that's finally there's a lot more eccentricity in the city than existed before.
I love that neighborhood where Emoji and Willie's is. I would have lived there in a minute,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Anywhere I can walk around, get a coffee, and see people to take in energy. I think it's the biggest thing as an artist. You need to be able to take in energy, you know?
So do you play at Zanies when you're in Nashville, or where do you go?
I've done Zanies, but over the last 5 years, it's I did the Ryman a
Nice.
bunch. Yeah, I've done the Ryman like 5 times now. And then I was there with Bill Burr. We did an arena.
Nice.
Yeah, I've done Zanies. You go to Zanies? It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. I've only been to a couple of comedy stores, the Comedy Store in particular, and Improv in LA and stuff. And I just and the Comedy Store in San Diego too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And my son's a aspiring actor, and he loves comedy. And so after shortly after, with all the chaos that's going on in the acting world and film and television in Los Angeles, it's been really hard. And so he started doing stand up just to be able to have stage time. And so I came out to see him perform at the Improv and stuff. And it's great. It's great it takes a fearlessness. I love it.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like you. I don't know if you ever played just solo, you and the piano.
Sure, a lot.
Right. So on my last tour as a musician was like 10 months opening for the Wallflowers, and I was solo acoustic. So you start to figure out how to tell stories that aren't generic every night, like how you doing, Oakland,
Yeah,
and between that and seeing like Henry Rollins do
spoken word. Yeah,
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 I really was, figuring it out without knowing I was going to become a comedian. I was figuring it out really on my last tour. And when you're playing solo on a piano, people like to hear little stories. I mean, Tom Waits could be one of the funniest guys I've ever seen. And
yep.
he's not even a comedian, but man, some of that stuff he says in his concerts makes me laugh so fucking hard. Jeff Buckley, he was one of the funniest guys I'd ever seen. In between the thickness of the darkness of those tunes, he really had some quick wit.
Well, it's critical. Storytelling is the secret of what I do. It's why people come back.
Right.
I'm convinced of it because um, being able to make people laugh, being able to bring emotion, is a gift. And being able to tell stories that are relatable, and it might just be a perspective of a particular day or time or concept, but you're able to tell it in a way that is relatable. I think there's an important factor in having a sort of a universal uh, way of communicating with the audience, and I enjoy it so much. It's a huge part of what I do, and it's really the secret of my show.
Yeah. Yeah, man. The more organic too, the better, you know?
Absolutely.
Now, are you're going out on tour? I saw the tour dates. Is it with your band and for this record, or is it Croce sings Croce?
It's it's uh it's all of the above.
I
It's
gotcha.
with my band, and we'll be doing Croce Plays Croce, and as part of Croce Plays Croce, which it has always been the case with me performing my father's music, it's not just that Croce. It's also me. It's me and him. So it's really two legacy, and it's a story of this connection and the music that connects us both. As I mentioned earlier, I was listening to all this great music that was part of his collection, and it was influential. But when I was in my early 30s archiving some of his recordings, I found there was one particular tape where every single song, these were really obscure songs, Pink Anderson, Bessie Smith, Fats Wallows, songs that were like not the only oyster in the stew. It wasn't Ain't Misbehaving or Honeysuckle Rose. These were really deep cuts by amazing kind of lesser known artists certainly today, and I had been playing these songs since I was 13 years old and realized we had this deeper connection to music. I had never heard him play them. They were not part of the collection of records I grew up with, and had discovered them on my own. And it wasn't just that I was covering the same artist; it was the same song.
Wow.
And I realized there was this connection, and I needed, um, in the process of preparing to open that Pandora's box of performing his music, I needed to be really sure that I was able to communicate who I was in the process of sharing his story and his legacy.
Man, I'll tell you, I'm 59, so his music was all day long on the AM radio and then later the FM radio as I got older. But that Time in a Bottle is probably one of the most haunting tunes of our time. You know, it's just when you hear it, it's like, wow, man. I mean,
It
you
was
know,
a real epiphany. It was an epiphany for him. It was his last. Uh, you know, my mother was pregnant with me, and he all of a sudden he had a purpose that he didn't have before. And he and my mom had recorded an unsuccessful album for Capitol Records in '67, and he wasn't sure if he'd get another chance. And so um, he was still playing on the weekends, and little bars and coffee shops and whatnot, and mostly covering other people's music. And I was listening to this tape and archiving around that same time as the other recording, and on one side he's just playing all of these old, Lefty Frizzell and Bill Monroe and Hank Williams songs, and then on the other side is Time in a Bottle, and it starts exactly the way that you hear it on the record. First verse, tape stops. Second verse, it starts, tape stops, and it's completed pretty much the way that you know it. And it was the epiphany, because after that the rest of the album was completed. There were a bunch of songs started, like Operator got started earlier, and New York's Not My Home was started in '69, Box Number 10. But it wasn't until then that he finally understood, like, I think, who he was, that was unique as an artist, that he had these two sides, one of being this kind of you know, uh, early rock and roll inspired, blues inspired artist who wrote stuff like Leroy Brown and Don't Mess Around with Jim, and then the kind of thoughtful um, folk singer of you know the other songs, Operator and Time in a Bottle and all of that. I think it was. It's funny how one song can sort of bring all of that to the surface. But I think it was really what happened.
yeah, man. Magic, magic right there. Um, I wanted to ask you this question. We were talking a little bit about comedy. When your father passed in a plane crash, there was a comedian on board, George Stevens. Was he
Yes.
the opener on the tour?
Actually, he was filling in for a guy named Jonathan Moore. Jonathan Moore was a British comedian who was had a very salty comedy style, and it was my dad was doing this run of the Southeast, and in the middle of nowhere in Louisiana and Texas, and they're just fly-in dates, right? And it was decided that his comedy would not be appreciated by the audiences in the Southeast and in the South, and so George Stevens was picked to go, but it was between him and Jay Leno actually,
Whoa.
and
Wow. I work with Jay a lot.
and yeah, I love him, and he's always been good to me, and we always had that connection. He knew that he might have been on that flight, and so it's kind of interesting because that was one of his, that had been very early in his career. My father was a really funny guy, and in fact, the reason we moved to California from Pennsylvania outside of Philly was because he had been offered the gig of guest hosting the Tonight Show. So when he died, Joan Rivers got the gig.
Whoa. I never knew that at all.
Yeah, it's but you can see he guest hosted once or twice on the Tonight Show, and they really liked the way it turned out. And he was just an easygoing, funny guy, and got along with pretty much anyone. Could find something in common with anyone, and it resonated. So yeah, he didn't want to live in L.A., but we lived so close to the airport in San Diego in those days. You could get a $25 flight from there to Burbank and be there in 30 minutes.
Wow. Wow. That's so
Uh,
true. Great.
it was faster than getting from West LA to Burbank.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's funny too, because your dad looked like a comedian, you know? He definitely, when I see him, he kind of had that kind of 70s comedian look, you know?
Well, yeah, he was friends with a number of comedians, and I know he and Carlin were pretty tight.
Yeah. A lot of musicians now have been bringing comedians back out on the road. It's like a thing now. I
I
did,
think it's great.
yeah, I did 32 dates with Marcus King.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, we went across America. I've opened for Metallica, Alice in Chains, Rival Sons. So, it's it was so standard in the 70s.
yeah,
And I'm hoping that the audience gets more used to it so you don't have to kind of wrangle them like, what is this guy, this roadie talking about his dick, you know? You
yeah.
know what I mean? They don't understand it. But if the room is seated, it's fantastic.
Yeah, and generally, I'm playing theaters that are seated. I do miss people dancing, though. I gotta say, it's hard. If there's a seat there, it's hard to really cut loose for them. But besides that, it really makes a difference because I think it's a great idea. Plus, when if you're going to bring someone out with you and they're going to be on the bus,
Yeah.
then it's a lot easier to have a comedian as just a one man band.
It's so much easier, especially sound check, gear, everything.
Yeah,
And you know, I had fun because I used to play music. So
yeah.
then I would, at the end of the night, Marcus and I would do a song.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
So I got the, rock also and
Yeah,
not have to worry about sound check or other band members going, "Hey man."
yeah, yeah,
All right, when's
yeah.
the tour start?
It starts in September 16th. I think our first show is in or the 17th. First show's in Grand Junction, then Boulder, and well, you can check out my website at ajcrocemusic.com and see all the dates listed. We'll be going through the Ryman and Town Hall in New York and a bunch of beautiful venues all over the country. And yeah, it's almost 2 month run that we're doing and finish at
Wow.
the end of beginning of November.
Yeah, man. You bringing a comedian?
I'm ready to, man. I'm
I'm
I'm ready to. Are you
I'm
ready to
ready.
go out?
I'm ready, dude. I'm ready. I
You
like
could.
the I like top bunk.
Well, I'll tell you this. We just have one more bunk left, so it might just be a possibility, and it's a top bunk. So, uh,
Yeah.
uh,
I'm there, man. I'm
because
there.
that's usually the gear bunk that will put
Yeah,
the
the junk bunk.
yeah yeah.
I spent most of my life on buses, man. It's funny. With the last tour I did, we had a fantastic driver, and we've used him now for a few years, or Marcus has for like 5, 6 years. And then Bill and I used him, and he's just amazing. When you get a good driver and you can go to sleep and not peeking out the curtain, like, hey,
Yeah.
it's on.
Oh, I know. Oh, I've got a driver who's such a character. He was a musician for many years. Played on the Opry and played all over the place. A bass player, but mandolinist, and his father was a real bluegrass icon, and he's been driving since he was 14 years old.
Oh,
And he's got a joke for you every day, every single day. He's such a gregarious character and wonderful driver. It really makes a difference.
that's great. All right.
Yeah.
Well, where are you playing in LA?
I will be back in LA next year. I'm not sure yet. Probably the Orpheum. That's where we played last time.
Oh, cool.
So just keep your eyes peeled. We should have some dates in a month or two.
Playing
Uh,
some great rooms.
yeah, it's been wonderful, and I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to we'll be finishing up this Midwest and East Coast run, and then start a Western U.S. run next year, and play a bunch of places we haven't played in a few years. Which is sometimes it's hard to get back to the smaller venues unless they're conveniently on the way to another place. As I know you understand,
Yeah.
and I'm looking forward to getting to do that next year.
All right, man. Well, stay in touch. Get my info from your publicist, and looking forward to it. His record is out right now. It is called Heart of the Eternal, and he has multiple records out. And I think you're
11.
11 records out. Man, I love it. I love it. And produced by Shooter Jennings. And I think you guys are going to love it. I just had SG Goodman on a couple days ago. So, it's right in the same kind of vein of fantastic singer songwriter, Americana music. Thanks for doing the show, bud.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good one.
Okay, I'll see you.
All right. See you.